Hello everyone, welcome to Modern Chess Kids. Today I'll show you the gameplay by Oliver and Tamas, and this beautiful game complete in only 24 moves. And here, let's see how the game play. The game start with the pawn to e4, knight c6, knight f3, d6, d4, knight to f6, knight to c3, then g6 was split, and here you have the modern defense variation. And after this, bishop to e3, then bishop to g7, and here the black prepare to go for the short casting. After this, queen to d2, the bishop play bishop to g. So after this, the white just go for a long castling, and now the bishop just capture the knight. Then the g pawn takes back the bishop, and after this, e5 was played. And at this move number 8, the white is better. Then the pawn d takes e5, capture it, and the knight capture it. Knight takes e5. Then queen to e2 was played. Then the black go for a short castling, and this is the first dead move, and you can see now the white is better in this position. Then the white continue to launch attack with the f4 to attack the knight, and the knight back to the position c6. Then bishop to g2, and here you have the idea of push the pawn to e5 and attack the knight, and which allow the bishop to attack the c6 knight. So in this actual game, knight to d7 was played. And after this, h4, the white trying to launch attack with the h4, and then can move to h5 and attack the pawn. Then continue to take another pawn and check the king. So after this, b6 was played, and now e5, and this allowed this bishop to become active. Then queen to e7 was played, and now h5 trying to push forward and attack the pawn. After this, the pawn capture, d takes e5, and here the h pawn takes the g6 pawn. And at this position, the black can just use the pawn to capture the pawn back. But in the actual game, the black used the e pawn takes f4, and after this allowed the queen to continue to play queen to h5 and continue to launch the attack with the simple checkmate if queen takes h7. And back to this position, if you use the pawn h takes g6, and the continuation will be such as move the pawn forwards, sacrifice of another pawn, and this will give the white better in the attack. And for example, if you use the pawn to capture it back, then now you have the queen to h5 and you'll be winning as well. The simple idea. Or you can just bring the rook to g1 and pinning the bishop, and you go for the attack. Or you also can use the bishop to capture the knight first, and after the pawn capture, then you can just use the queen to go to h5 and preparing for checkmate. Or you would also can use the rook to g1 and attack the bishop and pin it. So for example, if you use the rook to pin it and any move from the black such as rook to b8, then the queen can just come to h5, and this will be a very easy checkmate with the queen to h7 or queen to h8, and it will be a checkmate. And back to this position, if you use with the pawn takes the g6 pawn, then the knight can play to d5 to attack the queen and force the action. So if you use the knight to capture, then the bishop will just capture and attack the king. And if the king move to h8, then now you can play a very beautiful sacrifice by playing a rook takes the pawn, and if the king takes, then you bring another rook to the attack, rook to h1 check, and if the bishop goes to h6, then the pawn will capture, and this allows the diagonal attack and win back the bishop. And here the black can push a g5 to prevent the attack, and now you just bring the queen to h5 and able to capture the bishop. And at this position, nothing much the black can do to prevent the attack. You can use the queen to goes to g7 and protect the pawn. Then the continuation will be the bishop takes the pawn and keep with the triple pieces attack the bishop, and this will definitely be winning for the white. So nothing much you can prevent the bishop being captured back. The which pawn you take, the white will be winning. In the actual game, after h takes g6, the black just capture the pawn, and here the white continue to play queen to h5, and this will be captured and will be winning easily. So that's why in this position the best move will be pushing the pawn to h6, and this will be just give white a better by winning a 2+ or 1+ only. But in the actual game, f takes g6 was played, and this is a tactical blunder which allowed the white to capture the pawn at h7 and check the king, and the king can just move to f7 and thinking that you can escape to this position. But in the actual game, you can't do much after being attacked by the white. Therefore, the bishop just capture the knight and go for the action, and after this, if anything capture back the bishop, then the bishop can continue to check with bishop to d5 and check the king. So after king to d5 check the king, and if your king goes to e8, then the queen can continue to capture the pawn and check. Or you can just move a bishop takes and check the king, and here you the pawn to and capture, then the queen will just capture, and now if the queen blocks, then you have a rook to h to e1, and this will be the open file and the simple checkmate. And now if the bishop block, then the rook will just capture again, and will be a checkmate the king in the center without any pawn protecting the king. So therefore, after bishop capture, this bishop cannot be captured back, and the best move will be to move the rook to but in this move, the black play rook to h8, and now the bishop goes to d5 and continue check the king, and now the king have few move, and the best move is to play king to f6. And at this position, if you play a bishop to c4, king to f6, and at this position you play bishop to c4, and white threaten with the knight d5 and check and mate. So here the queen just capture and the knight to d5 check, and after this the king to e5, then the knight takes e to queen, and now the rook capture and the bishop will just capture the c7 and check the king. After king to f6, then knight to d5 check, and after king to f5, then you have a rook takes, and here the white is clearly winning with the extra pieces. So after king to f6, then the knight to e4 and continue. This will be a tactical blunder, and if the black queen capture the knight, then you will be white will have a very little decisive advantage only. So this is a mistake. But in the actual game, the queen do not capture it. Instead, they move the king to e5. And after this move, the white win the game and mate in 5. I give a couple of seconds to figure out how the condition of white to play and win the game and checkmate in 5. Well, congratulations for those who found the answer, and for those who like to enjoy the show, here are the moves. And in the actual game, after this, queen takes g6 and allow the rook to attack, and also the queen control most of the square. And after this, nothing much the black can do. And in the actual game, the rook just takes the rook, thinking that the exchange will be a winning, but the brilliant move is the bishop takes c7 and check the king, and after queen capture the c7, and you have a queen to g5 and checkmate. The knight is control the square, and the bishop is control all the square, and the king has no place to move. And back to this position, and if the rook do not capture the rook, if the knight move to d4, then the bishop will just capture and check the king, and after check the king, if the king just capture the bishop, then you have a knight to c3 check, and knight king to c4, then the queen and you have a diagonal check at queen to d3. And after this, the king to b4, then you have a queen to b5, and this will be a checkmate. And with this, thank you.